abortion was. But this man showed slides, and he talked about abortion and what was going on in these abortion clinics that were around. And it was horrifying to see that. So we decided as a group to form Lifeline of Picayune. We got in touch with a couple from North Mississippi who came down and spoke to us as to how to set up a pro-life, a crisis pregnancy hotline. And they were connected to Right to Life, so they had been doing this sort of thing, and they were knowledgeable. Well, the hotline was set up actually in AP's office. He was had an office where he distributed gas and fuel products, oil products, to service stations and to businesses, to manufacturing plants, to airports, boats, that kind of thing. But the main office had a little service station in front of it, and there was a little kiosk or little building in front where the people would go and pay for the gas that they took. That was before the sophisticated fuel tanks that we have now. Anyway, so that's what would happen. We had about maybe 15 to 20 volunteers, and the volunteer would call in from 7 to 9 every weeknight during the week. It would be from Monday through Friday, and one volunteer would take maybe a Monday night for the month of June, and then the next month they were off, and then they'd be on the following month. So it kind of rotated, and it worked very well, and the person calling in would not be aware of where the call was coming from. All they would know was that the call that was on the signs outside that talked about crisis pregnancy. So it worked very well before we have a much more sophisticated place in Picayune now where people can get personal help. We were certainly not counselors. We were volunteers who would give reference numbers and give them some maybe advice as to where they could call to get specific help. But anyway, there were about 15 to 20 of them, and I'll just tell you a couple of quick stories when I happened to be on the line. One girl called one night, and she was threatening suicide. Apparently her stepfather had been molesting her, and she called, and she was desperate. She was afraid she was pregnant, and she didn't know what to do. And I remember talking to her, listening to her, for over an hour. I asked her if her mother knew, or could she talk to her mother, and she said, "Oh, Mama knows." She said, "But she wants to keep him. She doesn't want him to go away, so she allows it." And so anyway, we talked for the longest time, and after a pretty long time, AP came in the back room and asked me what was going on, and I just wrote suicide on a piece of paper, and he lay down on the floor on the carpet in the bedroom and just prayed while I was listening to her, while I was talking to her. And I remember at one point she sounded so bad. I asked her if she had anything to eat, and she said no, she hadn't. And I said, "Would you have any peanut butter or milk in the house?" Well, she did, and I told her I'd stay on the line if she would go and fix herself a peanut butter sandwich and some milk. And she came back and she sounded a little bit better. But at the end of the conversation, after maybe a couple of hours on the phone, and she was equipped with all these numbers now, she had written everything down, who she was going to call the next morning. Well, at the end of the conversation, I said, "Well, honey, I'm going to pray for you, and I love you." And there was dead silence. And then she said, "Don't nobody ever told me that before." Another girl had been raped, and she had gotten medical treatment at the time, but she did become pregnant, and she kept calling because she didn't want to have an abortion. But of course it was a very difficult thing, and we became very good friends. AP just brought that up. We became good friends. She got my personal number, of course, and she called me frequently, and she ended up having the baby, a precious little baby girl, and she invited me to the shower for the child when she was born. And when I went there, her grandmother, who couldn't have been 5 feet tall, came over to me and took both my hands and said, "Thank you so much. This child is the light of my life. I'm so glad that she's with us." So it was worth it. Everything was worth it. Now, there's another story that the Lord was trying to work on forgiveness for me. AP didn't know I was going to tell this story. We were out in the yard one day, cleaning the yard, and we were, just he and I, we were working all around the yard trying to get everything cleaned up. And I had bought, maybe 2 years before, I had bought some bulbs. And you know the pictures on the bulb package? You see these beautiful big flowers that are just beautiful. Anyway, that was what the picture was on the package. And it had been 2 years and nothing had happened. There was no blooms, and it was a vine that went all around the fence. Well, I went past it with my weeds that I was pulling up. And there on the fence was the most beautiful bloom I'd ever seen in my life. It had purple petals and then white petals and something green going on in the middle. It was just beautiful. And so I picked it, and then I went to look for AP to show it to him. I was so excited, and I couldn't find him. He was all the way on the other side of the yard. And anyway, it took me a while to find him. And when I did find him, he's walking up to me with a handful of vines. And you're ahead of me, huh? A handful of vines. And sure enough, he said, "I finally got that nasty vine off that fence." Well, of course, that was the beautiful bloom. So I just kind of had to walk away and ask the Lord. He certainly didn't know. He didn't do it on purpose. But I had to ask the Lord to please forgive me and forgive him. But anyway, that was my work in forgiveness. Well, this story I wasn't going to tell because I was afraid it was going to take up too much time. But yesterday, it was the responsorial psalm at daily mass. So I thought, okay, Lord, I hear you.